Hello, I'm Esther Gido-Ewart. It's Friday, March 24th. This is Africa 54. World Health Organization Africa Regional Director warns of raised public health risks, including cholera, in the wake of Cyclone Freddy, which battered Malawi, Mozambique and Madagascar. U.S. Vice President Kamala Harris' upcoming trip to Ghana, Tanzania and Zambia makes her the highest-ranking Biden administration official to visit the African continent in recent months. And emerging artists in Ghana and Malawi make some big headway with large-scale music concerts. Music Time in Africa host Heather Maxwell will have the details. All that and much more coming up on today's Africa 54. The World Health Organization's Regional Director for Africa warns of the increased spread of cholera on the continent. Dr.Matshidiso Moeti speaks of the dire humanitarian situation in the wake of Cyclone Freddy, especially in Malawi, Madagascar and Mozambique, which is seeing a rise in diseases such as cholera. Overall, 12 African countries are currently experiencing cholera outbreaks, and those outbreaks are being exacerbated by extreme climatic events, according to Dr. Moeti.
The cyclone has left an appalling humanitarian situation in its wake. More than 300 health facilities, including university hospital centers, have been destroyed or flooded in Madagascar, Malawi, and Mozambique, leaving communities without adequate access to health services. The extensive damage, flooding, and torrential rains have affected more than 1.4 million people in the three countries and stretched the capacity of health systems. The cyclone's devastation has raised public health risks, including the increased spread of cholera, malaria, vaccine-preventable diseases, even COVID-19, and malnutrition. And of course, support for trauma and mental health is equally needed.
United Nations Children's Fund is calling for $155 million to respond to the impacts of the flooding and cholera on children and families in Southern Africa. U.S. Vice President Kamala Harris will become the highest-ranking Biden administration official to visit Africa when she begins a tour of Ghana, Tanzania and Zambia on Sunday. Her office says she will work on strengthening partnerships, security and economic prosperity. VOA's Anita Powell has more from Washington.
After a wave of visits this year to the African continent by top U.S. officials, Vice President Kamala Harris steps up next. The White House says this builds on the administration's progress since last year's U.S.-Africa Leaders Summit, where President Joe Biden pledged to work to strengthen ties with the continent.
She's the fifth senior-level U.S. official to go to Africa. She will have covered with her colleagues nearly a quarter of the countries in Africa with personal visits just in the last 3 months. So it's an unprecedented amount of attention and diplomacy going towards Africa, more than we've ever seen from a previous U.S. administration. So I think that's the significance of it.
And Harris, the highest-ranking elected woman in U.S. history, will also meet with the continent's only female head of state, Tanzanian President Samia Suluhu Hassan. The White House says Harris will speak with the elected leaders of all three countries about their commitment to democracy, a way, Hudson says, that Washington can distinguish itself.
They're also all countries that have a very substantial relationship with China on the trade front, the investment front, and now increasingly on the debt front. So, this is a place where Washington can come and really advocate for the kind of democratic values and try to shore up those values and partnerships with countries that, like many other African countries, are, working with a variety of powers.
Harris is expected to press African nations, many of which abstained from condemning Russia's invasion of Ukraine during United Nations vote, to acknowledge Russia's aggression. VOA asked National Security Council spokesperson John Kirby if the vice president would raise human rights concerns on her trip.
The vice president will, of course, raise human rights concerns everywhere she goes. That's part and parcel of American leadership around the world. We're not afraid. In fact, it's a sign of how much we care about other nations and partnerships that we are able and willing to have those kinds of conversations.
And democracy campaigners say they'd like to see her push democracy as well.
It's important that the high-level attention is brought to this issue, and I think the fact that the vice president and other senior leaders will be deeply involved in these events around the globe and in Zambia is very good, and it's important to show that commitment and that sincerity, and also the sincerity of purpose. And that's where it links back again to being able to be honest about where we need to address our own shortfalls.
And Harris wraps some family history into this visit. Her maternal grandfather, an Indian diplomat, worked with Zambia's first post-independence leader. Nearly 60 years later, his granddaughter, the most powerful woman to hold office in the U.S., and first South Asian and Black woman to rise to such heights, will meet with Zambia's president. Anita Powell, VOA News, Washington.
Excitement is building for Harris' visit to Ghana.
And my expectations, first and foremost, is basically about the history. I'm looking forward to the history that this whole visit is making. Of course, she's the first female vice president. But then beyond that, this comes at a time when, as a country, we are going through serious economic crisis. So my utmost expectations has to do with what she is bringing to Ghana. Of course, this is something that the government itself will be looking forward to.
She is somebody that I personally liked because as the first female vice president of the US, who is also a black person, I think that when Joe Biden was elected as president of the United States, many Africans and many black people who were happy were not really rooting for him. But the fact that he had a female and a black woman as vice president, to me, was also positive, and that is why I was rooting for Joe Biden to win the election.
I think it's a very instrumental visit that Vice President Kamala Harris will be making into Ghana. I think it's also on the back of the last time a U.S. president was in Ghana. That was Barack Obama all the way back in 2009. So I think it's going to be also a very historic, knowing very well that she's also one of the first black vice presidents of the United States coming into Ghana. And I think it's going to also boost Ghana's bilateral relations.
Any visit by any high-powered person from the U.S. government, talk of president, vice president, to Africa is a big deal. And for Kamala Harris, she's the first female black vice president of the U.S., and that's a big deal. And a lot of people are looking forward to her visit, and I'm particularly excited because she's someone who believes in African innovation, and for a woman like that coming to Africa, I believe that it will give a lot of people the opportunity to also believe in themselves and know that indeed they can also aspire to be great, and also bring in some good investments into Africa. Already Africa is the future.
For more perspective on Kamala Harris's upcoming trip to Africa, Paul Nantulia, a research specialist at the Africa Center for Strategic Studies, joins me via Skype from Washington. Hello, Paul.
Hi, Esther. Glad to be here again.
Looks like a very concerted effort by Biden administration to reconnect with Africa. First of all, Kamala Harris stop in Ghana first. Why Ghana?
Well, Ghana, a number of things. Ghana is a consolidating democracy in Africa. This is something the Biden administration is really trying to push. It's a country that changes leaderships frequently through regular free and fair elections. Secondly, there's a very strong cultural tie between the United States and Ghana. Since 2019, when the Ghanaian government announced the year of return, 5,000 African Americans have gone and settled in Ghana. So that is very, very significant. This is the highest number of African American families in Africa, even higher than Liberia. But then there are also security issues on Kamala Harris's agenda. Ghana is consistently one of the top 10 peacekeeping troop contributing countries in Africa. That's important for the U.S. And recently, Ghana just hosted a major U.S. military exercise that brought together over 30 countries, exercise Flintlock. in Ghana. So security issues will also be on the agenda of this trip.
Paul, I want to make sure we get to the three countries. So let's look at Tanzania. Why Tanzania? We do know she met with President Samia Suluhu Hassan, but what's the focus here for the East African country?
One, there's an affinity because Samia Suluhu is also the first female president of Tanzania. Secondly, Tanzania is also rebuilding its democracy after years of democratic backsliding. Lifted bans on gatherings, lifted bans on political parties, allowed political opposition leaders to return into the country. And President Suluhu has also shared platforms with opposition leaders. So Tanzania has always been that exemplar of democracy, which is something the United States will try to promote.
Paul, move on to Zambia. The focus on Zambia. Why?
Focus on Zambia again, rebuilding democracy. Zambia, like Tanzania, had backtracked some years ago, is now rebuilding democracy under President Hichilema. Again, Zambia will be co-hosting together with the United States a democracy summit later in March. That's definitely going to be on the agenda. And there's also a very special tie because Kamala Harris, when she was 5 years old, she spent time in Zambia. Her grandfather, Ambassador Gopalan, was dispatched to Zambia just when Zambia had gained independence. And he was assisting Zambia to cope with the influx of refugees from Rhodesia and was working very closely with liberation movements. That is something that has caused a lot of excitement in Zambia and in Southern Africa.
Thank you so much, Paul. Paul Nantulia is a research specialist at the Africa Center for Strategic Studies. March 24th is World Tuberculosis Day. TB is a bacterial infection of the lungs and it's one of the world's deadliest diseases. After decades of progress, cases are now on the rise. As Henry Ridgwell reports, there are hopes that a vaccine may be developed in the next few years to help eradicate the disease.
Tuberculosis killed 1.6 million people last year. Progress against tackling the disease was set back significantly by the coronavirus pandemic.
Because of the lockdown, because of the fact that actually the response to COVID was constructed a lot on the work, on the equipment, on the hospitals and dispensaries, on the staff that worked for TB. A lot of them were completely shifted to deal with COVID.
Doctors say that has led to rising numbers of people with untreated and undiagnosed TB. India has the highest disease burden globally, with more than 500,000 TB deaths in 2021, about a third of the global total. But there is hope that the disease can be overcome this decade. India diagnosed and treated 2.4 million people with TB in 2022. Indonesia, Bangladesh, Nigeria, South Africa, Ethiopia and Brazil also made progress. World TB Day on March 24th marks the anniversary of German doctor Robert Koch's discovery in 1882 of the bacterium that causes the disease. This year, the theme is Yes, We Can End TB. India has set a target to effectively eradicate tuberculosis by 2025. The World Health Organization has set a global target of 2030 through diagnosis, treatment, and the development of a vaccine.
When you put together the fact that we have a bit more political commitment, or more, I would say, that we have a lot of new tools that we didn't have before, that we have the perspectives of a vaccine to come in the next 2-3 years, and we have an amazing civil society and community platform and networks, it's actually giving us a lot of hope that we can end TB.
But that will require more funding, an estimated $230 billion over the next 8 years.
We are pretty convinced that the world will try to end TB and will try to be as bold as it was during COVID. Because for COVID, for the COVID vaccine, $100 billion were found more or less like that.
Tuberculosis is more prevalent and deadly in poorer countries. Scientists say a lack of commercial opportunity has hindered research and development into new TB medicines. But the development of a new vaccine would save millions of lives. Henry Ridgwell for VOA News, London.
World Athletics has banned transgender women from competing in elite female competitions and tightened testosterone restrictions for other athletes, according to a statement by the governing body. We get more in this report produced by Freddy Joyner.
World Athletics voted on Thursday to ban transgender women from competing in elite female competitions and tighten testosterone restrictions for other athletes.
The Council has agreed to exclude male to female transgender athletes who have been through male puberty from female world ranking competitions from March the 31st this year.
World Athletics President Sebastian Coe said that the decision to exclude transgender women who had gone through what he called male puberty was based on what he said was the overarching need to protect the female category. The new rules will also impact athletes with what is known as differences in sex development, or DSD. The most famous might be South Africa's two-time Olympic 800-meter winner Caster Semenya, who has XY chromosomes and blood testosterone levels in the male range. The council vote will require DSD athletes such as Semenya and Namibia's silver medalist Christine Mboma to take testosterone-reducing medication and maintain low levels of the hormone for 2 years before they are cleared to compete. That could keep some DSD athletes out of events for 24 months. Although Coe said some could apply for a shorter 6-month monitoring period.
So none of these athletes will be eligible to compete in the World Athletics Championships in Budapest in August. They will be eligible to compete in other events after that 6-month period, including the Paris Olympic Games next year, if and only if they maintain their testosterone at the required level.
The move banning trans women come as some claim athletes born male have innate physical advantages over those born female.
The majority of those consulted stated that transgender athletes should not be competing in the female category.
The tighter measures around some of the most contentious and divisive issues in sport follow a similar move by World Aquatics in 2022. Coe announced the formation of a working group, which will be chaired by a transgender athlete, to further study the issue of trans inclusion.
That report was produced by Freddy Joyner of Reuters. Still to come in our entertainment report, Heather Maxwell highlights emerging artists in Ghana and Malawi. Stay with us.
Every year, United States honors women of influence around the world who courageously advocated for rights of citizens and showed leadership, often in face of government oppression or threat. These are women who are making substantial difference promoting peaceful and inclusive societies while supporting efforts to ensure human rights, justice, and gender equity. On this week's episode of Our Voices, we will look at this year's recipients of the International Women of Courage Award and explore how their courage and commitment contributed to create a better society. Join the conversation each week right here on Our Voices.
In other news, Democratic Republic of Congo President Felix Tshisekedi has appointed former militia leader Jean-Pierre Bemba as Minister of Defense in a cabinet reshuffle on Friday. Bemba, who served as vice president from 2003 to 2006, had been jailed by the International Criminal Court over crimes committed by rebels under his command, but the court overturned his sentence in 2018. Weeks after a violent crackdown on migrants in Tunisia, many African nationals are still homeless and jobless, and some say they still face racist attacks. U.S. Assistant Secretary of State Barbara Leaf says that President Kais Saied's comments had unleashed attacks and a wave of racist rhetoric. And Ethiopia has dropped a draft motion that sought to bring an early end to a United Nations mandated investigative probe into the Tigray war after pressure from Western countries, according to diplomats and observers. Xu Zichu, the chief executive officer of TikTok, is pushing back against calls from U.S. lawmakers to ban the social media app, claiming the company is not connected to the Chinese Communist Party. But bipartisan concerns about the safety and security of the app's 150 million U.S. users remain. VOA's congressional correspondent Catherine Gibson has more.
The head of the massively popular video sharing app TikTok on defense Thursday as bipartisan calls to ban the app or severely restrict its use gain momentum.
TikTok collects nearly every data point imaginable, from people's location to what they type and copy, who they talk to, biometric data, and more. Even if they've never been on TikTok, your trackers are embedded in sites across the web. TikTok surveils us all. And the Chinese Communist Party is able to use this as a tool to manipulate America as a whole.
CEO Xu Zichu said the app is a place for free expression, and his company is working to safeguard data stored in locations in the U.S. and Singapore.
I have seen no evidence that the Chinese government has access to that data. They have never asked us. We have not provided.
Lawmakers concerned that TikTok's parent company, ByteDance, is controlled by the Chinese Communist Party.
The combination of TikTok's Beijing communist-based China ownership and its popularity exacerbates its danger to our country and to our privacy.
Global security experts contend the app could be a national security disaster.
TikTok is programmed to be weaponized. And if China can weaponize a balloon, think of what it can do with 150 million TikTok users at its mercy in the U.S. alone.
But Xu sought to refute those claims.
ByteDance is not owned or controlled by the Chinese government. It's a private company. 60% of the company is owned by global institutional investors. 20% is owned by the founder, and 20% owned by employees around the world.
China says the U.S. has yet to provide any evidence the app threatens national security.
The U.S. should stop spreading disinformation.
And not all U.S. lawmakers agree with calls for a ban.
TikTok as a platform has created a community and a space for free speech for 150 million Americans and counting.
TikTok will soon be banned from all U.S. government devices. The White House saying this week it's carefully considering a nationwide ban.
We understand the popularity of TikTok. That is something, we get that. But the president's job is to make sure, again, that their Americans' national security is protected as well.
New bipartisan legislation would not outright ban the app, instead giving Biden increased ability to regulate and sanction social media companies.
We have a free market economy. We have a Constitution, a Bill of Rights, and the rule of law. And so when we go about a process like this, it has to be orderly.
A TikTok ban could be deeply unpopular with many younger Americans, a factor lawmakers may consider ahead of the 2024 elections. Catherine Gibson, VOA News, Washington.
It's time for Entertainment Report, and joining us now is VOA's Heather Maxwell, Music Time in Africa host. Hello, Heather.
Hi, Esther. Emerging artists in Ghana and Malawi are making big gains. In northern Ghana, singer-songwriter Israhim gave the region's first large-scale concert of 2023, and popular Malawian singer Keturah made her first international debut in the United States. Here's Israhim speaking with Samet Gaida just after his The Journey concert.
Hello, Israhim.
Yeah.
How are you doing?
I'm good.
Great. I would like to know who you are. Who is Israhim?
What I have to say about Israhim is, my name is Abdurrahim, and my father's name is Abdallah. So, in all, Abdurrahim Abdallah. I born and raised in Tamale, and I live in Gumani. That's my hood, and I do Afro pop music, and I'm a songwriter as well.
Oh, yeah. So, how long have you been doing music?
10, 11 years now.
Wow.
But then I was not active like that. I was underground learning the music. So
in my life, I know one problem. I know one problem. I know one problem. But the problem they find me.
All right. right. So now let's talk about the concepts. How did you come by that concept, the Jenny concept?
Yeah, the Jenny concept, looking at where Israhim came from and where I'm intent to go. Israhim journey has not been easy. Like when you look at how I started my music career, those that knows me very well will testify that I faced a lot of challenges in my career. So I said to my team that we need to celebrate this journey of my career. So that is where the show title came from.
Yeah.
Jenny concept.
Jenny concept. There are some who also say you are from Fancy Gadam's camp. How true is that?
Yeah, it's true. It's true. You know, when I started my music, I realized that I can't do this alone. I need to see someone who can show me the real road that I need to follow. That was then, and I realized that it is only Fancy Gadam who is doing something that I also think I can't jump on it. I said to myself that, this guy can teach me what I want to learn.
You seem to have a good relation with all the northern-based artists because almost all of them were at your concert.
Yeah, sure.
Fancy was there, Makasio was there. They were all there. What's your relationship with northern-based artists?
Yes, some of them, they are like a family to me.
Okay, so what message do you have for your fans, those who came to the concert, to music lovers across the globe?
I'll just say a very big thank you to I appreciate everyone that joined hand and made this show a very successful show.
Thank you, Israhim. So, over to you, Heather Maxwell.
All right, now for Malawian singer Keturah, a well-known celebrity in her own country. She traveled to America for the first time to record her album in Los Angeles, featuring members of the Playing for Change band. In this song, Kwanu Kwanu, which was recorded live in LA, it's based on an African proverb that says, however far the stream flows, it never forgets its source. Keturah wrote the song about people who travel far from home and forget their roots. And she says, you can go wherever you want, but always remember where you come from. Keturah's self-titled debut album is due out May 19th. And that's it for our entertainment report. Back to you, Esther.
Thank you so much, Heather. Be sure to join Heather Maxwell's Entertainment Report every Friday here on Africa 54. That's it from us. Have a good night.